Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, Account Planning, Roles for Sales and Marketing. Today's event will be led by Megan Heuer, VP and Group Director at SiriusDecisions, and Tim Brayman, VP of Corporate Strategy for Revigy. Megan is a sales and marketing thought leader with more than 20 years of industry and professional services experience. She leads SiriusDecisions' account-based marketing and marketing operations services. Tim Brayman is a longtime veteran of the sales world with a particular passion for account planning and management. Tim has primary responsibility for the strategic direction of Revigy's solutions. For the purposes of this presentation, Megan will be speaking to the role of marketing and Tim will be adding context for sales.
Great. Thanks so much, and thanks very much for inviting me to share some great information with you today. And together with Tim, I'm going to cover some of what I think represent, some of the things that I think represent the best opportunity for sales and marketing to work together effectively and to really make sure that both are contributing as much as they possibly can to business growth. What we'll be talking about today are a few things. First, we'll talk about a few things that have gone wrong. What's not working in the sales and marketing relationship, and why might that be? What are some of the challenges that marketers are up against that may be preventing them from doing everything they can to support sales and help them make their goals? Tim and I are also going to talk about the account planning process. What are the things that each of us can bring to the table from a marketing perspective, from a sales perspective, and why that collaboration is so important in that planning process? Along with that, we'll share with you the ideal roles and responsibilities for sales and marketing within that account planning process and the way that means those two functions have to work together and align around the goals that are set for those accounts. Along the way, we'll talk about account segmentation and how important it is to be able to understand how your accounts are similar and how they're different and the different roles that sales and marketing then can play to work together towards the goals that you have for those accounts. And also, throughout the way, we'll be sharing some customer stories to bring to life some of the types of activities that companies can do to not just create these account plans, but then also bring those plans to life in terms of the activities they're going to put into the market to go after those goals that they've set. So with that in mind, let's first talk a little bit about account planning. And I'll let Tim share with you some thoughts on that.
Thanks, Megan. So as we prepared for this webinar, Megan, I got really excited about this because, long ago when I was skinny and had hair, I was a global account manager for a handful of accounts. And one of the things that I really hated about account planning, and there were a couple, was we'd get everybody together for a solid day, bring in everybody related to this account who touched the account, sales management, sales support, the operations teams, everybody, and we come up with this brilliant account plan. And then at the end of the day, there was this enormous long task list, and miraculously, my name as the account manager was next to every single task on the list. And everybody would wander out of the room saying, okay, great job, good plan, go execute, Tim. So one of the things that really got me excited and jazzed up about this session, Megan, was how we could involve marketing in the process to help me execute those global account plans. Because, the plan is great, but you've got to execute against it. You and I had some fun coming up with some of these quotes here. One of my personal favorites is the one by Yogi Berra that says, if you don't know where you're going, you'll end up someplace else. And that's kind of what happens in a lot of account plans. We'll build a plan and then we throw it in the drawer and we never look at it again. And at the end of the year, we ended up someplace else. So looking forward to this. Let's roll forward to the next slide.
Tim, it's not just sales that gets frustrated with this planning process. I hear from marketers every single day about the challenges that they're facing in working effectively together with their counterparts in sales. And both groups have a goal to help companies grow. And primarily the way that marketing has been asked to help is by contributing lots of leads. And they're sending a lot of these leads over to sales, but the thing that I hear every single day is sales won't follow up on my leads. And part of the problem is that sales is coming back and saying, I don't really need those leads. I don't know if these leads are what I want. And marketing comes back and says, but didn't we talk about this? Didn't we go down this whole sales and marketing alignment road and agree on the definition of a lead and that you're going to follow up on it within 24 hours and then everything's going to be great? And sales comes back to those marketers and says, that was all well and good in the old days, but now I have a list of target accounts and your leads aren't really helping me. And marketing comes back and says, well, okay, if that's what you have to work with now, you've got that list of target accounts, how about you let me help you? I'm happy to do it. We're marketing, we're here to help.
Yeah, I love that. I love that one. And that brings to mind this next slide, which is a reference to an old relationship joke, right? About the difference between being involved versus being committed, and using breakfast as the metaphor. And so if you're having breakfast, the chicken is involved by providing eggs, but the pig is committed. And, that's from my perspective, and a lot of the sellers who I'm representing in this call, that's kind of how we feel like is we're a little bit worried about inviting, we've had some rocky roads with marketing in the past. We know that there's value. We don't know how to effectively work with marketing. And, frankly, at the end of the year, if I don't bring in those deals, if I don't make that number, I'm gone. They're turning me into bacon and sending me loose. So, a lot of my peers are very control-oriented. I also am very control-oriented. So, this is an opportunity, I think, for marketing and sales to work together, where I think both sides look at this as a huge win on working together on named accounts and on large accounts. So let's talk about the opportunity next, Megan.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Right now, most marketing organizations think that they're dealing with an infinite universe of accounts out there that they could possibly sell to. Now, this isn't true of every company. Some companies have, by definition, a more defined universe, but let's overgeneralize and say for most marketers, they're thinking, hey, I can be selling to anybody, so I'm going to do my very, very best job on broad-based demand creation. I'm going to send those leads over to sales. But as we've just talked about, the world of sales in many organizations has changed, or is in fact a named account or even a named and strategic account environment. And it's not really true that everything in the universe matters. So when we don't focus on planning together and making sense of that universe and figuring out where there are connections and where there are the best opportunities to grow, we're really missing the promise of sales and marketing alignment. And realizing that promise of sales and marketing alignment really goes back to building those smart plans. Right, Tim?
Yes, it does. And there's great value in this. So this is from a specific case study for one of our customers. And they wanted to pilot this concept of, how do we do better, more effective strategic account planning and the value that it could potentially provide. So literally, this time a year ago, September-ish, they were doing a pilot in a couple of different business units. And the primary objective, the measurement that they were going to generate was, or use, was how much additional pipeline was generated from the account planning process. And if you're doing really good large account planning or strategic account planning, you're planning not just for the current year, but a couple of years in the future. And the impressive thing that these folks found in these two pilots was, number one, the end of Q3, they actually found money for Q4. And they also identified by really looking at how their customers were executing where they had future opportunities. So there's huge value in doing this account planning very well in terms of really the very first leading indicator is driving up pipeline. That's one of the very first leading indicators of really effective account planning. So where did we come from on this process, Megan, now that we talked about the value of doing it well?
Yeah. One of the reasons that account planning is so important to bringing sales and marketing together is really rooted in some of the changes that modern marketers are dealing with right now. It is harder and harder and harder and harder to reach the people that we want to reach with traditional broad-based outbound marketing tactics. This is all based on data that SiriusDecisions has collected over the last few years about the reality of the market in terms of what it is marketers are contending with when they're thinking about the tactics they need to use to generate that opportunity. And what we see is things like bombarding our decision makers with a huge number of touches every week, and how do we stand out there, thereby kind of reducing our chances of ever reaching the right people with some of our marketing tactics. Even outbound tele is finding that it's harder and harder to get the right people on the phone. Contrast that too with the fact that marketing's role is more important than ever when we think about the fact that such a large percentage of the buyer's journey is in fact happening online. And this is happening at all stages of the buyer's journey, not just the early ones, not just that very early education stage. So what this means is that when sales and marketing think about how they're going to work together, they have to do so understanding the limitations and the opportunities presented by the buyer's journey and the buyer's environment today. And one of the things we find too is that the increased desire for sales and marketing to work together and to be able to collaborate comes from the fact that the tools of marketing have sort of picked up in importance in terms of the buyer's journey. And some of that is actually still a bit of a mystery. See, where you see that not provided, that is the percent of inbound touches, the inbound contacts coming to an average website where there's no data on how those people got there. So marketing is having to kind of unravel some of that mystery of how buyers find you and why they find you and what they want to interact with, at the same time as sales is wanting more visibility into that digital part of the buyer's journey that marketing can contribute. And when both of those groups, sales and marketing, are thinking about how hard it is to get to those decision makers that they need, you know, it can seem a lot like a game of Survivor at this point of who's going to last the longest in that buyer's journey and do the best job of sort of standing out from the crowd. But that's if you're not properly factoring in planning. So let's think about then what happens if sales and marketing don't plan together. What we really have is sales only being able to say, what we really want is just more leads. You know, marketing, just give us more leads. And they're not being very specific about the kinds of leads they need at this point. They're saying, marketing, just do your best, get us what you can. Marketing says, great, we're going to get you more leads. But then when those leads aren't the types that sales needs, especially in that named or large account environment, then they're not going to follow up for obvious reasons. It's not going to do them any good. Marketing then becomes concerned that there's no follow-up, and sales comes back and says, well, that's because what you've sent me isn't any good. And this, of course, leads to frustration and a lot of wasted effort on both parts. And this is when we combine that really, really difficult environment in terms of how hard it is to reach buyers and the need to use marketing's toolkit to do it effectively, but the lack of collaboration for sales and marketing around what both of them need to be doing to reach those buyers effectively. And what we found is really that the old method of planning, where we begin with thinking about what do we want to sell and what kinds of activities do we like to put into the market to help to sell, and then, okay, based on what we want to sell and how we want to promote it, who are we going to then try and encourage to react to us? That really doesn't work. That's the old method of planning. That's what got us into that unfortunate scenario of sales and marketing not getting along and that fight for survival based on whose tactics happen to stand out the most. What we really need to do is change that and go back to an aligned planning process where sales and marketing both agree on who it is the business needs to reach in order to grow and what is important to those prospective buyers and existing customers who will make up that growth goal, and then decide how it is sales and marketing together will go and pursue driving that growth within those organizations. And that is what an aligned and collaborative account planning process can really bring to the table.
Megan, this is Tim. I wanted to comment on that because I so earnestly believe in this, right? I mean, you talked about 67% of the buyer's journey completed before we get involved. And frankly, we did a lot of that to ourselves as sellers, right? And you know, I'm not going to lay any of the blame at marketing's feet, but we go out there and talk about product, and then, hey, we just renamed our products. We called them solutions, and we called solution. We're just talking about us, and we're not talking about the customer. So, reversing that picture to start with the customer and what they're trying to accomplish really allows us to have that intelligent and successful conversation with them. Whether that conversation is voice to voice, you and I talking to a prospect, or whether it's, electronically in some way, shape, or form. So I'm a huge fan of this, and this is a fundamental concept in really good account planning.
Absolutely, and making this shift is actually harder than we think sometimes, because we are so focused on what is it we have to sell and how do we find people. What we really need to start with is what is it that people need, and how do we put the right opportunities for them to engage with us in front of them. So let's talk a little bit about how then this account planning process can work more effectively for both sales and marketing, and what part each one of those functions needs to play. First things first, we need to agree on terminology. We need to say, what is it we're trying to accomplish? And in most of the organizations that I work with, they've got different kinds of account-based models at work. So it's very helpful to begin with just some level setting around what is it we're talking about here. The first type is large account, and that is your very one-to-one, highly customized relationships with typically very large global strategic accounts, where you are going to need to do targeted, customized, one-to-one kinds of outreach. That is one type of account-based marketing, and one type of account-based planning then that has to go along with it. The other type would be named account, and that's where you've got a longer list, typically a combination of new prospects and existing customers who are on a list of accounts that sales has been asked to pursue. And that is typically a blend of different industries, different markets, different kinds of companies that you need to go after, often geographically aligned. But in the end, it's a list of accounts that sales has said, these are the accounts where my growth is going to come from, defined universe. A different type of named account is industry or segment, where instead of it being a combination of industries, combination of types of companies on that named account list, they are all in one segment. Say you're responsible for large financial services institutions in a particular geography, but they have in common some kind of industry or other type of segmentation that makes the companies on your named account list more alike than not. The fourth type is customer lifecycle, and this is where you're really focused on existing customers only, and you've got a defined universe within that existing customer list. But if you think about it, every single organization typically has a blend of these types of accounts and a sales model then that breaks down sellers into tiers or segments themselves for who's focused on what within the sales organization. What they usually don't have is a marketing organization that is similarly aligned to provide support based on the types of accounts that sales needs support for. So what we recommend is that the marketing organization apply resources to the types of accounts that sales has in its go-to-market strategy, so that you've got a portfolio of accounts with proper support both from sales and from marketing. And that then can be used to say what part does each function play in the planning process, and how should marketing be taking those sales account plans and adding their own marketing account plan to it to make sure that they're perfectly aligned to the ways that sales needs to reach its goals. The other thing that's a little different in this scenario is that whereas typically marketing would be focused on an exclusively demand creation objective, when you get into sales account plans in the large account, strategic account, or the named account or industry account environment, you've really got to factor in two different kinds of goals. The first is our old friend, the opportunity goal. What is it we'd like to sell, and who do we want to sell it to, and how are we going to pursue that? And there's variations on that, net new or cross-sell or upsell, but in the end, it's an opportunity. But to get to some of those opportunity goals, we also may have relationship goals to support. And if we look at the language in a lot of sales account plans, very often it'll talk about need to build relationship with so-and-so, or need to improve relationship with so-and-so within the account. Because without those quality relationships in place, we're going to have a really hard time reaching those opportunity goals. So marketing in this account-based environment needs to be prepared to help sales with the goals in their plans that are related both to opportunity and to relationship objectives.
Hey, Megan, this is really important because in a lot of account planning efforts, people are really focused just on the opportunities and the next opportunity and the revenue. And if you get into some companies where they've got account managers with a lot of longevity, they have a tendency to be very attached to specific relationships. And marketing can do a great job of, as each company grows and add more products and more capabilities in adjacent spaces, by helping open doors to the buyers in those spaces that perhaps the sellers themselves are having a hard time accessing. So that's another great place that marketing has a ton of value in account planning.
Absolutely. And the nice thing about account planning is there's a very defined process that sales and marketing can share in order to deliver these plans that address both those opportunity and those relationship goals. First things first, you need to have some data about those accounts. You need to have knowledge and insights about what's happening in those accounts and about their needs so that we remain focused on the right messages, the right outreach to get to the people that we need to get to in those accounts. And from that, we can then define our goals. And we just talked about the two different kinds of goals, but specifically, what is it that sales needs to accomplish in this account over the planning period? And then marketing can come in at that action step and say, what is it marketing can contribute to this plan to make sure that their actions are helping sales with those goals that are based on the insights and the data about that account. And last but not least, both sales and marketing need to be able to observe and measure outcomes from that action process, that execution layer, to be able to say, is what I'm doing helping to move us closer to those goals? And that's important, especially in some of those scenarios where the deals that you're trying to close, the opportunities you're trying to get, are going to take a long time, sometimes a year or more to win. So making sure that you have observable outcomes at all stages of that plan right from the beginning is really important. So if that's our planning process, what is it that sales and marketing need to bring to the table? Well, if we think about it, there's some typical things that sales is very accustomed to contributing to the planning process. Things like, where are we in this account? What are the opportunities we'd like to pursue in this account? What goals do we have? What is our strategy in terms of some of those relationships? All of these are typical things that sales brings to the table. What's not as typical in this process then is the part that marketing can bring to the table to make getting to those things sales has to deliver hopefully a little bit faster, a little bit easier, perhaps taking some of the administrative or fact-finding burden off of sales in some of those situations, but then also bringing to the table some of that visibility into the aspects of buying that are more obvious to marketing, the things that are happening online, for example, or other types of participation in marketing activity, and other types of analytics that marketing may be running that they could be sharing with sales. So by bringing this into balance to say, here are the things that sales typically delivers or has to do, and then as you see on the right here, here are the things that marketing can really bring to the table, you then have a collaborative planning process, and marketing should be comfortable and prepared to say, what are we going to first give to sales in order to get back a higher degree of confidence that marketing actually does have something they can contribute here to make not just the planning process, but sales' ability to realize those goals that they've set a lot better. So this is very much kind of a slide that marketers can use to say, here's what we can give you. Here are some of the things that we have that might be useful to you, sales. Will you give us a chance to participate in this process?
You know, this is one of those where, you know, it's very cliched to say it, Megan, but, you know, from marketing people, you had me at hello here, right? I mean, it's one of those things that I can't remember how many nights and weekends I spent working on my CPA, cut, paste, and attach, where I'd be looking for all kinds of documents in all kinds of different places, doing research to cut and paste into the account plan, because it was me, myself, and I to do that first upfront work. And so, you know, just raising your hand in marketing to say, hey, we can help. We can provide you with this information refined and ready to go. And then, oh, by the way, where the most important part of account planning is the execution side. You can help me execute. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, generally speaking, I'm always interested because marketers come to us and they're very nervous about going to sales and saying, hey, we can help sales, you know, here's some things that we can do. And what I tell them is, I promise you that first meeting when you go to sales and you start speaking their language about account goals and wanting to know what they're trying to accomplish in their accounts, they're going to be all ears, and they're going to be very open to that conversation. Where you really need to deliver is that second conversation, where you're actually coming to the table prepared to deliver something useful and show sales that you've listened and you've followed through, because that's where you begin to build trust. I've never seen it be the case where sales is reluctant to give marketing the benefit of the doubt from that first conversation. They're excited to get some help, but marketing really has to follow through. So Tim, maybe you can share with us some of the ways that it's going to be possible for marketing to follow through and how they can work better with sales.
Okay. I'll give you a couple examples here from our customers, and I put together some pretty pictures here. So, at the beginning of the year, if I am a territory account rep or I have a series of named accounts as a seller, I have this enormous long list, and probably somewhere around November or December timeframe, I'm going to be looking at this list of accounts that I've got, trying to figure out, okay, here's my number. How do I make this number next year? And I've got a great long list of a bunch of companies' names, and how do I look at this account list and identify where I should focus and where I should invest? And so if you'll click the button, the very first thing that I'll probably do is look for the accounts where I have in-flight opportunities. Go ahead and click again. And so I'm going to pull together all those in-flight opportunities, and I'm going to work, those are the ones that I need to close out this year and get closed in first quarter and second quarter of next year. So I'm going to have some heavy focus on this. And Megan, if you click, we'll talk a little bit about how marketing can help. And this is one of the things that you've already mentioned is, how do you help me accelerate and win those opportunities, right? So can marketing help me with specific campaigns in those specific accounts related to those specific opportunities and where they are in the journey, and help me accelerate and win those opportunities? And then the next thing that I'm going to do that marketing could really help me with as I'm planning out the year is I look at the rest of these accounts and go, okay, what are the next best targets, right? So top of my plate, highest priority is closing the deals, the in-flight deals that are sales qualified opportunities, right? But after that, I'm still going to have to find more deals. So how do I go through that list of 20, 30, 70, 100 accounts to figure out what are the next best targets? And marketing can really help out here with a lot of information about propensity to buy and who are the best and most likely candidates to pursue. And the messaging or the campaigns that marketing can do, click once, would be to help me gain access, right? So how do I generate interest in some of these accounts? Maybe even how do I get in the door at some of these accounts? If I've got an enormous account list, I may not have called on every single one of these particular accounts and the buying centers in those accounts. So marketing can help me by opening some doors and focusing, in those particular high propensity to buy accounts. So let's take a look at a couple of examples from a couple of our customers and how they approached it, right? And so, this is one of our this is one of our financial services customers that took this particular approach. And the data itself is obfuscated to kind of protect the innocent, if you will. But listed down the left-hand side is just a series of accounts that they're pursuing. And then listed across the top are the different products that they sell into those accounts. And so you can think of a financial services institution and all the different kinds of products that they can sell, treasury products, credit products, loans and leases, etc. And they use this kind of a visual map where the white boxes indicate they've got no penetration of that product into that customer. And the black boxes to indicate full penetration of that product into that particular customer. And so they use the visualization mechanism like this to figure out where, for given territory, should I be focusing my efforts? Which products should I be focusing? And for every different territory or grouping of named accounts, this would often look very different. And so that's a conversation that I can then have with marketing that says, marketing, we really need to focus on products 1, 2, and 3 in my target accounts here, and I'd especially like you to help me penetrate some of those customers where we have 0 penetration. And that's a great conversation to have with marketing, And they can be very specific about opening those doors and helping me get ready.
Yeah, and Tim,
one
of the things that's really helpful here is if marketing has no visibility into this kind of coverage and no visibility in terms of where sales is focused and what they care about most, they're going to go back to that wide open universe and guess in terms of where it is they need to be placing their efforts. So this kind of visibility, shared and online, really makes a big contribution to marketing's ability to create the right types of outreach to do the right things that sales really needs.
Yep, exactly right. Now let's look at one more example of that. Now this is another customer that we've obfuscated, and this is a software company. And what they were looking at is that large enterprise software company, a lot of products, how do we figure out which of our customers to focus on, have the highest propensity to buy, the best potential? And they did some analysis and came up with a series of attributes working with both sales and with marketing to identify, how do we identify high potential customers? By looking at things like, how much do they spend, how much of the spend are we getting, how close are they to our ideal customer profile, are they satisfied, are they growing or are they in decline? All of those indicators had a big impact on whether this customer was likely to spend more money with you. And so this is this kind of an exercise where you go through your accounts and marketing and sales working together to come up with and outline those attributes and then leverage it into account plans is a great process of truly really recognizing where we should focus our efforts. And we'll look at what this looks like in some analytics in a second. But Megan, I think you wanted to talk about this in the strategic context next.
Yeah. What we're really trying to build with this kind of information is that universe, that connected universe, not the random one, where we know the accounts that we believe growth is going to come from, and we know inside of those accounts which buying centers are likely to need what type of solution from us, and how we're going to then be able to tune our sales and marketing efforts most efficiently to go after those opportunities. So the theory of it looks something like this. Where you've got across the bottom here, you're saying, okay, what buying centers do we have opportunity in within that set of accounts? And then along the left, where do we know more, know less, have a better opportunity, have a not as good opportunity based on a variety of different factors? And how can we then go ahead and plot where our accounts live? And this picture is one of those pictures that everybody really, really understands in theory and says, great, I get it, I need that, but how do I build it? And Tim, that's where I think you can share a little bit about how your customers have approached that.
Right, so this is that software company example that we just talked about, where they looked at each customer and sales and marketing completed all the propensity to buy attributes, and then we had the software map it out in a 2x2 grid, where from the bottom to the top is the potential value of that particular customer, and then from left to right is increasing how much revenue, annual recurring revenue, they generate for us today. So what you see is along the bottom, the accounts in the bottom left, there's not a lot of potential value. We can't sell them a lot more, and they don't generate a lot of revenue for us today. The ones in the bottom right, well, they generate a huge amount of revenue for us today, and we love them, but they're sold out. They've got an unlimited use license agreement, or we fully penetrated that account, or what have you. There's not a lot of additional potential value. Where we want to work with marketing is on those targets in the upper right and in the upper left to focus on different kinds of campaigns. So we want to expand into new buying centers and new products in the accounts in the upper right. In the ones in the upper left, there's huge potential, but we don't get a lot of revenue today. So we can work very closely to come up with campaigns and how to get our current products, our primary products, more robustly into those customers. And then in the bottom right, we can leverage marketing to nurture those customers and provide them with content and best practices, not necessarily trying to sell them anything additional, but how to drive up that satisfaction and net promoter score and make sure that we retain those customers. So being able to understand that universe of customers and the tactics and actions and strategies that you should employ is crucial to doing team-based account planning, where you're bringing sales and marketing together and architecting an overall vision for how do we work on a a portfolio of accounts.
Yeah. And kind of what's different about this, because we could say, well, sales already has some account plans, and marketing can look at those account plans and decide what to do. Well, that's saying that every single one of those account plans, especially say if they live in PowerPoint or Excel and they're all offline, and then there's some online data and it's not really connected, and marketing has to ask, and they're not really going to be able to see changes, and they're not really summarized and put into this format that helps marketing group and prioritize, you can see where there's a lot of inefficiency built into sort of the next logical step of, oh, well, we'll just ask sales for their account plans, and then marketing will build plans to help them. Well, if you're not able to look across all of those account plans and begin to make sense of where you have groupings of like opportunity, and then define the right role for marketing to play based on that, you're not going to be able to scale your efforts in the same way as if you are able to bring things together like this. So here's an example of saying, okay, well, if we agree that we're going to focus on that lower right quadrant, say, in our chart there, and we know exactly which accounts those are, then marketing can say, great, we're now going to agree on the situation in those accounts, we're going to agree on the goal that we're pursuing for those accounts, and we're going to come back with some recommendations for the types of activities that are going to be appropriate for marketing to deliver or for marketing to provide to sales, and for sales to then leverage within those accounts based on the deal stage of those particular deals. And that shared view into both the big picture, but then also the individual account details makes it possible for marketing and sales to get to this kind of a view of here's what we're going to do with whom and when a lot faster than if marketing is attempting to put together a whole bunch of PowerPoint plans and dump that into Excel and figure out where all that lives. And this also leads to a lot of frustration with marketers because they're having trouble then getting to the big picture, and sales is wondering what's taken them so long for coming back to them to make good on this promise to help. So by being able to have this kind of shared collaborative view that's easy to get to and easy to use and easy to update, you get to this kind of an action plan a heck of a lot faster than if you don't have it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you do an account plan in Microsoft Excel or PowerPoint for your top 100 accounts, how do you aggregate that information in any kind of reasonable fashion? And how do you get out of the, that never-ending process of who's got the latest version because I can't find it in the portal and somebody else updated it, and it's, it gets crazy that way. You've got to have some kind of centralized vision, automated solution where you can aggregate that information and make intelligent decisions. I mean, that's the whole premise for a lot of marketing these days, is how do you have the analytics to understand where to invest?
Well, and Tim, we've just talked about one type of account model, the named account or the industry account model, where you've got a bunch of accounts that you need to make sense of. How does this work in the large account environment?
In the large account environment, Megan, it looks pretty much exactly the same, except instead of a portfolio of accounts, you may have one very large account like GE that is your portfolio of account, right? So, the interesting thing is how do you look at GE and figure out how do I penetrate? Because, even a given subsidiary of GE, like GE Energy or GE Healthcare, is a Fortune 500 company in and of itself. So how do I look at that particular account and all the buying centers in that account and leverage the same kind of concept where do I have deals in flight? Where should I be focusing next? Which business units and buying centers, geographies, etc. And doing the same kind of role-based breakdown, right? Sales is looking to close deals and figure out how to penetrate the next best target. Marketing can help us accelerate where we've got deals in flight, and they can help us identify the buyers, gain access, and generate interest in those next set of customers. So this is that place, and Megan, you and I had this conversation about taking with companies who've got marketing support for their very largest customers, right? And so we talk a lot about the Pareto rule. Quite frequently, your top 20% of your customers can be generating 60 to 80% of your revenue. So investing time and money and resources in them makes a lot of sense. So we talked about customized marketing here at this point. So, how do I build campaigns for GE and for GE Energy that speaks specifically to them. It's not general purpose campaigns, general purpose content and collaterals that I've been using, but given the ecosystem within a company like as large as some of our biggest customers, can we work with marketing and come up with campaigns that are specific to that large account? And by taking some existing campaigns and then tailoring them to somebody like a GE. Does that make sense, Megan?
It absolutely makes sense, and this is where marketers need to think a little bit differently. This isn't the case where sales is creating a plan and they're just going to come to marketing and ask for marketing to set up an event or an executive briefing. That's not the role that marketing should be playing here. Just like in those named accounts, your buyers in large accounts are doing a lot of their fact-finding online. They're choosing to participate in different types of marketing activities. They're seeing what other customers have to say about you via social media and other types of community. So it's really important for marketing to be on top of and aligned with what sales is putting into their plans, but also being creative about what it is they can bring to the table to contribute to advancing some of those specific goals and making sure that everything they're doing is in the context of what that account needs. So what you're seeing here are a number of examples of the places where marketing can really help. And I'll give you an example of one that's very popular as a starting point for a lot of our clients, and that is what you see at the top here, the stakeholder and buying center analysis, customer demographics and profiling, and even industry trends. Those are all things that marketing can help sales to get, especially if when you go back and think about the buying centers in that account that represent the best opportunity for you, but where we haven't got any in-flight opportunities, we don't have a whole lot of contacts. Well, as a starting point, marketing can be bringing some of those contacts to the table, be bringing some of that information to the table, and then together with sales agree on the best way to get into those buying centers and to engage those contacts. So what are the right things to put in front of them? But there are really a number of different things that marketing can bring to the table in this large account scenario that go way beyond those traditional events.
Megan, this is one of my favorite things here, this slide, right? Because those are the 7 things. I've looked at hundreds of account plans in my life. Those are the 7 things that appear in virtually every single account plan I've ever seen, right? And the fact that marketing can help me populate the account plan with good, accurate information in all of those areas so that we can then come up with the critical thinking around how to best penetrate this account more deeply and widely and deliver on the customer's goals. And then in the bottom right, what I think of as possibly the most important element of the account plan, the action plan. What are we going to do? And finally, there's somebody, Megan, you raised your hand for all of marketing and said, Tim, we're going to help you sell. We're going to help you sell your existing in-flight opportunities, and we're going to help you find new opportunities in these named accounts. We're going to help you execute that account plan, that account action plan, which is a rarity in my experience. There's not a lot of people raising their hands saying, hey, we want to help you execute.
Well, and just like we had that portfolio in the named account setting where you had in-flight opportunities, high propensity midterm opportunities, and then some that were out a little bit further, how much of a help is it if you've got marketing really providing that air cover on the long-term opportunities while also providing support for the near-term opportunities, but not making it be 100% sales responsibility to do all of those things all at once, and by definition then probably not able to do many of them, only a few that are the most near-term. Marketing can be the function that can kind of pick up that long-term view and help make that easier for sales to accomplish.
And Megan, this is absolutely very critical in large accounts. There's a fairly common cycle in large accounts where you go out, you hunt the elephant, you kill the elephant, you eat the elephant, right? And while you're doing that, you're not doing anything because it takes you a long time to eat the elephant, so you're not out there hunting anymore. And so you have this big rhythm of revenue that peaks because you were really, really effective and hunted the elephant, and then while you're feasting, you're not out there hunting. And if marketing's out, and maybe that's not a great metaphor and the visual's a little awkward, but hey, it's really effective if we hunted that big deal and marketing's out there finding the next deal while, you know, the rest of the team is preparing the feast, so to speak. And this slide here is just so crucial to making sure that, do we understand who are the people in the accounts? What are their agendas? In general, what are the needs, the requirements, the issues, the KPIs, all that deep insight that marketing has for the different roles or titles or personas in our accounts so that we can be very targeted. We can't just, splatter these people with a bunch of generic messages. These are senior level executives at major corporations. We've got to have targeted, spot-on messaging for them that's extremely relevant, has deep industry insight, and demonstrates our credibility right out of the box. Because with these folks, you definitely never get a second chance to make a first impression. And if your first impression is all talking about your product, your company, et cetera, you're going to be shown the door pretty quick. And this is an area that marketing really helps sellers get ready for.
Well, and it's also the case, though, that if sales has this kind of information about the relationships that they have or don't have, as the case may be within these large accounts, and even other functions within the organization have awareness about the status of those relationships, but that information isn't something that both sales and marketing can get to, you might have marketing making a mistake of saying, oh, great, we've got a CIO contact in this particular company, and I'm going to send them what I've put together for my CIO persona generally. Well, in this large account, sending generic CIO type of information to somebody who really doesn't want to hear from you right now could actually harm the relationship even more. And this is where marketing in these large accounts really needs to have the information that lets them go from persona-based messaging to person-based messaging that's going to reach Marie Jones here and make sure that she's engaged with the right message at the right time, potentially even brought to that person by sales and not by marketing, even if marketing's providing it. Or if they don't go down that road, not only is marketing's effort going to be wasted with that CIO, but it could actually make things worse. So the idea here is that instead of all parties having a little bit of information about who it is they're trying to reach and what that person's likely to care about and the past history, bringing it all together in one place really makes it a lot easier for there to be fewer missteps and a lot more alignment, a lot more agreement around what it is we need to do, with whom and why, and what messages are likely to help us be successful. So we put our best foot forward right from the start. Now, let's close out our conversation today thinking a little bit about outcomes and measurement, because this is really critical in an account-based environment. What we want to make sure we are doing is setting up a way to be able to tell all along the journey whether or not we're on the right journey, we're heading in the right direction. And at first, we're going to be primarily monitoring things around activity. What things can we do to know that if we do these things, we're following the right path towards better aligned planning, better aligned execution, and ultimately the goals that we're trying to reach. So early on, that will be things like, did we actually go through a planning process together? Did marketing come to the table with some insights or some contacts that sales didn't have before in buying centers that are important to them? If they did provide these things, did sales actually take advantage of them? And then early on, if in that planning process they've agreed upon some specific activities that marketing can deliver or marketing can provide tools to sales to deliver, did the contacts within those accounts actually take advantage of the offers that were given to them? So those are some things you can see right away. Are we on the right path? After some time has passed, you should begin to see some outcomes. So those first activity measures need to actually contribute something. The outcomes that we're looking for in the near term are things like, did we generate pipeline in the areas, the buying centers that we said were important to us within those various accounts? If we had in-flight opportunities, have they progressed to the stage that they should have progressed to in this amount of time? Are we actually helping those deals move forward faster or get unstuck? Also in the midterm, you're going to be looking for things that tell you that if there were aspects of the relationship you needed to work on, that those relationship measures are going in the right direction. And those would be things that come out of either your loyalty survey work to tell you what those levers of a positive relationship are and what things show that that's working, whether that's additional product engagement or transactions, things like that, whether it's reduced number of service calls, whether that's a higher level of engagement or online activity. There's a variety of things that may point to the advancement of that relationship, but that's what you want to be looking for here. And then finally, in the long term, what we're trying to get to is revenue growth. So we want to be able to show that we have, in fact, built the closed opportunities in that account that we said were important to our sales targets, and also that we've held on to the revenue that we already had if it was an existing customer. But we really do need to get to that revenue outcome, and all these breadcrumbs are really showing us the way there. The other thing that we're looking for in these accounts, especially in that large account scenario where you're investing potentially quite a bit in making sure that that is a high quality, effective relationship for that important customer, you want to be sure that they're, when you ask them about that relationship, that they are indicating that it is a good one for them. They are more loyal. They are more likely to speak positively on your behalf. So doing that ongoing loyalty tracking, that brand perception tracking, and also tracking the willingness of people within that account to participate in various kinds of advocacy, whether that's a formal reference program or even social media, informal kinds of activity from that account. That's also something that shows you that the investment that sales and marketing have made in that account is going in the right direction and has led to positive things. So in the long term, it's both revenue and that loyalty and advocacy outcome that you're driving towards. So if we're able to do all of this with our planning process, it becomes a whole lot less a question of who in the end is the last company standing when it comes down to the choice of who wins that deal. A whole lot less of a game of survivor to if we all put our various capabilities and insights together, the outcome is going to be reached a lot faster, a lot more profitably, and a lot more effectively if we work together. And now, Tim, I think we were going to try and open it up from questions if anybody who's on the line is wanting to learn a little bit more about what we've shared today.
We do have a couple of questions. We only have a few minutes, but we'll try and get to a few of them. So one of the questions that came in was, how should I get started with a program like this?
Well, I'll take that from the marketing side, and I'll say if that was a marketer asking, then marketers, the first thing you're going to do is reach out to sales and find out how they do their planning and find out what from that planning you can see and find some friendly places where you can begin to build marketing plans that address the goals in those sales plans. And Tim, I'll let you take that from the sales side.
You know, Megan, as a VP of sales, I'd love it if marketing reached out to me. Frankly, right about now, because, you know, I'm heads down thinking about closing out Q4 if I'm a SVP of sales. So, but I do know that next year's just around the corner, that the board's working on what's the number for next year, and I know that account planning, that if we do a good job of account planning in our most important customers, that has a huge impact in revenue. So if marketing would come to me and say, hey, I'd like to help you with the first two steps with this. You know, first I'd like to work with some of your sales managers to understand what they think are going to be the high priority accounts. What's the best propensity to buy information, so that marketing could then take that insight, crunch it, and come back with recommendations on where to focus, and then pick certain customer accounts to go after and say, hey, we'd like to then go after these top 5%, if you will, of accounts. We'd like to work with the key account manager or the territory account manager that over these areas and help them do their account planning. I think your VP of sales, your chief sales officer is going to fall all over themselves to say, heck yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say too, you know, if you're a sales leader and marketing isn't coming to you offering to align their efforts to the types of accounts that you have in your portfolio and the way that you go to market, you can call them out on that. And I think that it's really important for sales to speak up and not just assume that they're going to get the same old non-helpful leads from marketing they have always gotten. You know, marketing organizations are capable of delivering a lot, and the more that they are held accountable for that, and the more that sales is open to them being a full partner in that revenue equation, becoming more committed, if you will. To go back to our breakfast analogy, marketing will step up, and marketing is very capable of helping there. So certainly, from the sales side, you can encourage that.
We have one last question, and this question came in from our audience. And Tim, this is probably for you. It's regarding the 4 quadrants of where accounts sit. The audience member wants to know if there are any specific questions that can be asked so that you can determine where an account falls on that grid.
Yeah, what we've noticed in terms of working with our customers is that one size does not fit all, right? So you can't have the exact same set of questions that indicate where these customers buy. But we have seen some fairly common sets of questions most frequently used, depending upon whether you're mapping existing customers or net new customers. So one of the more universal attributes to look at is the revenue growth rate of the customer or prospect, right? So if their revenues are declining, that's typically a universal indicator of not so great. If they're stable and not growing very much, kind of neutral. And if they're growing rapidly, that's typically a very common indicator of great success. Now, if it's an existing customer, you want to look at things like relationships at the C level, number of buying centers or wallet share that you've penetrated, how satisfied the customer is. So, there are a handful of kind of standard questions that you ask for the different types of customers, whether it's customers or prospects, but one of those things is you do have to spend a little time understanding exactly your customers because, like I said, one size doesn't fit all. Megan, do you have a cut on that?
Yeah, there's a lot of different things you can use as the dimensions to assess those different account relationships. But the key one I usually see is just starting with how much opportunity potential is there. So what's the potential value of that relationship contrasted with the current value of the relationship, and then also a way to layer in an understanding of the state of the relationship, good, bad, or indifferent. And I think if you can get to some measure of those 3 things, you're in pretty good shape.
Well, I want to thank you both for participating on today's webinar, and I want to thank everyone in the audience. Thank you both again for your participation today. Everybody have a great day.